Craving Grace, Diamond Dogs Book 2, written by Ann Malley, narrated by Ann Malley, copyright 2021.
Chapter 1. Las Vegas Boulevard, Las Vegas, Nevada. Gracie Snow prayed for an assist from above and walked up the strip. She was working undercover on a high-profile sting that could make or re-break her already trashed career. A Chippendale moved out from beneath the Flamingo Hotel's pulsating Lotus marquee. Not the help she'd wanted. His starched white collar glowed beneath pearly teeth, and she thought she'd get sick right then and there. Game over. "Hey, red lights and siren girl, where's the fire?" he drawled. She suppressed a glare and kept walking. "If you're late." "He'll wait." "Guaranteed." "Guaranteed?" Maybe, maybe not. Nothing was a sure thing, not in Gracie's experience. The risky operation that had a pragmatic strip mall detective contracted to the FBI and wearing circulation-stopping leather pants may lead nowhere. Gracie couldn't help wondering, though, did that dancer know she was meeting someone? Could the grinning Chippendale know who she was meeting? She glanced at the shirtless stranger. He was already posing for photos with a giggly tourist. But he was right. Her contact would wait. Gracie had to believe it. Rushing would only call undue attention to her or leave her flat on the pavement thanks to heels that should have a Surgeon General's warning. The dancer may be FBI. A skull and snake tattoo coiled against his flat abs with no weapon in sight, so what help he could provide was anyone's guess. The microphone bug in Gracie's ear crackled, while the stud on her leather choker facilitated a video feed for Gracie's handler. "Focus, Snow, or do you want this mission to fail?" With a decided eye roll, Gracie squelched comebacks that were long overdue. Special Agent Janice Fitzsimmons, monitoring Gracie from a nearby paneled van, sounded put off. Nothing new there, and yet Gracie almost felt sorry for her. The FBI agent fixated on asserting superiority like others Gracie knew and disrespected. Those who couldn't did squawk the loudest, but confidence is what Gracie needed, not attitude, however justified she may be. She was on track. Gracie was the one who'd notified the FBI about Clive Harrison's potential terrorist links during a successful attempt to obtain compromising photos of his cheating wife. The chatter surrounding the poor sap was disturbing. That Gracie had been urged to take on his case by an anonymous third party said all bets were off about how deep this rabbit hole went. A text message followed by a timely bank deposit to cover excess investigative expenses spurred her to take Clive's case. But who wouldn't do that? Who among Clive's social circle would be generous enough to fund dirt digging on another man's wife? It wasn't the creep she'd photographed with Clive's cheating missus. An employer? An investigator? A friend? Gracie left off her anxious questions. Desperate, barely making it detective shouldn't care overmuch where money came from, so long as it kept the proverbial lights on. Fitz cleared her throat. "I got it, Fitz. You're the boss," Gracie said, while thinking the opposite. Fitz may be top dog for now, but if this mission went well, Gracie may land a coveted FBI position to surpass her handler. Respectability was on the table, too. That almost pleased her as much as a steady paycheck. "Good," Fitz said. "We don't need you getting sidelined." "Then you should have let me carry," Gracie answered. Her 9mm HK was useless in her dresser drawer, although she relied more heavily on the crucifix she wore beneath her clothes. Was she relying on luck more than the Almighty? Maybe. Probably. The same setup had been true when she'd been deployed. Her expectations of career advancement had been foiled, however, despite coming back alive. She prayed anyway, out of habit and face front. Tucking at her scratchy burgundy wig, she studied the homeless man advancing. An Uzi took shape beneath the drill-soaked mound in his grocery cart. That was likely her imagination. Being on alert wasn't something a gal could flick off easily, and a submachine gun could end this mission in moments. She'd witnessed enough surprise attacks to make her question everyone and everything, even herself. What had she been thinking taking on Clive's case? What miracle of miracles was she hoping to pull off now? Future reward was a self-styled carrot to keep her going. Nobody in their right mind would accept being unarmed bait, but that's exactly what she'd done. What choice did she have? Her wounded warrior brother needed serious help despite hating her, and her military record had been ruined by the powers that should not be. She choked on a mix of disgust, fear, and desperation, continuing her trek up Las Vegas Boulevard. "Meet Harrison at Hell's Kitchen," Fitch said. "Let him introduce you to his friends, and you're home safe. Snug in your bed." Her mothering tone was beyond obnoxious. This isn't that big a deal. Where's my backup? Don't worry about it, Fitz answered. The last thing we need is you staring down agents and blowing their cover. This isn't domestic surveillance outside the Desert Moon Motel. You're not alone. Trust me. Right. Gracie felt like she was outside the wire of Al Assad Air Base, aligned in someone's crosshairs, while a chair force lieutenant with zero experience read platitudes off a tip sheet. Her skin crawled. Blood was acid in her veins, despite assurances. She checked her Omega watch. The chunky timepiece was a reminder from her dad that she could do anything, despite her brother and his best friend insisting otherwise, and she'd better do it. She stepped toward the alley. A stretch limo crossed against the light, cutting her off. Gracie whirled from the black-tinted glass reflecting the flamingo's spastic lotus lights and her own sorry self. Neon glided by like a solar burst, and she suddenly felt expendable. Was she out of her depth and out of her mind? If she could do anything, she could choose to go quietly into the night, forget her training and aspirations, but somehow the white picket fence alternative featuring her as a sedate homemaker seemed far more dangerous. She needed a gun, not a blender. Whatever you're thinking, stop it, Fitz barked, and hurry. You're not late, but it's no crime being early. Early is out of character, Gracie answered. I can't have Clive getting suspicious. He might be wary already. This whole meet and greet was weird. Let me worry about that. You do what you're told. I'll do the job, Gracie always tried. She took the stone stairs to a pedestrian catwalk over the road. Hell's Kitchen nestled close beside the Caesar's Palace complex. She smoothed hands down flesh-squeezing leather, crossed the bridge, and took the stairs to pavement below. A smoldering brunette draped in a bright yellow ensemble and a silver fox of a man took the escalator down to Gracie's left. The brunette's lazy gaze caught Gracie's. Shivers licked her spine. The moment froze. It felt like January instead of early June. The unexpected rain that afternoon had proved anything but refreshing. An invisible fog pressed all around. But fear was like that. Fear instigated the prayers that spewed forth like some hidden spring inside her hammering heart. She begged God to get her through this, as she'd shamelessly done before. She had been delivered from evil, but she still resented living while having a perfectly valid career path obliterated. Her brother's best friend, the same guy who doubled down on her unfitness for overseas duty, would never be bested now. But tonight wasn't about Jay Sykes, not at all. And yet it was. That soured Gracie more than any Chippendale ogler. The woman in yellow smiled pointedly when Gracie took a final look in passing. She melted into the crowd with her man in tow while Gracie gaped over her shoulder. Did you see that? She asked Fitz. You're fine. Everything's fine. Harrison just arrived, Fitz said. He looks like he might bolt. He's a nervous type. Gracie was too, with strangers gaping at her. Name's Gracie. Harrison flies out at 6 a.m. Identifying faces would be better. You're getting a clear video feed, right? Yes. We're running a check on that skull and snake tattoo. There's no reason for that Chippendale dancer to pick you out of the crowd. Now go. Somewhat appeased, Gracie slipped into the courtyard between Caesar's and the exclusive shops that rounded out the complex. Clive sniffed incense at the Brahma shrine. Middle-aged and middle management said it all, even in the criminal world. Stuck was stuck. Poor Clive. The real estate financier had likely fallen in with a bad crowd. That's how bad happened to most people. Clive's wife was a peach, too. Gracie waited 1-2 minutes. Then she strode into view with a relaxed show of teeth. Hey there, boss. Names, Fitz whispered, then went silent. Clive walked up the portico in 3 strides. I didn't think you'd come for a moment there. Wrong again, Gracie said. Her contact's thick-lidded gaze fixed on her mess of curls, then swung down to her leather-clad thighs and ridiculous shoes. Clive fancied her for more than the legwork she'd provided in his divorce. No doubt that's why he withheld drafting her a final check. The pittance he believed was her only salary. He'd insisted on dinner with friends. Gracie could get more work, though, and Clive could save face with a show of cheap arm candy. I'm not the best at reading women, he said, but I'm glad to see you. You deserve a thank you. You're very generous, Clive. His benefactor had been. Clive flinched and said, Gracie surveyed the scene. She turned towards the Brahma, then back at Clive. Hell's Kitchen's fire fountain threw off heat. Its pitchfork centerpiece pierced her soul with dread. Shadows skipped across the courtyard, but Gracie managed a flirtatious glance and took Clive's Armani-clad arm. Gordon Ramsay, chef extraordinaire, greeted them in the foyer behind the glassed entry. The life-size holograph was far more gracious than his character on television. Gracie's stomach rumbled, communicating more than she wanted Clive to guess. She hadn't even caught a whiff of food. With a touch to her stomach, she laughed it off. You could use a solid meal, young lady, and friends who can afford to be friendly. Clive took her hand and smoothed his fingers over hers. Everyone will love you almost as much as I do. I don't know about that, she said. After a sharp left turn, they passed the Hell's Kitchen swag. Patrons to the right were queued up and visibly impatient. They stared daggers at the pair that walked straight on to reception. The crinkled noses in gaping disbelief smarted. Elitism wasn't Gracie's gig, but this was Clive's realm. A rail-thin hostess in platform pumps and a sheath dress made of liquid gold dipped her head. Her smile gleamed as brightly as her blunt-cut blue-black hair. "Right this way, Mr. Harrison. Clive, please." He pulled Gracie in with an unexpected tug around the waist. The hostess peered over her shoulder. "How long are you in town for this time?" "Not long enough." Clive fixed Gracie with a pleading look. "This is Gracie Snow, an associate. I'd appreciate you extending her every courtesy." "Whatever you say, Mr. Harrison. Clive."
The hostess guided them through the maze of tables. The chefs visible in the five-star kitchen, team blue and red, focused on their creations as the trio moved into private territory. "Your party has already arrived," the hostess said. "Excellent." "You'll love the wine pairings," Clive said to Gracie. "I don't drink." She couldn't afford to even if she liked it. "That's right," he said. "Better to stay alert." As they filed in behind the hostess, Clive's arms snuggled around Gracie's waist. His fingers pressed close to wires she couldn't explain, wires Fitz insisted upon because Bluetooth had a reputation for cutting out. Gracie pushed away and laughed again. Clive glared. Not like him. But the man had feelings. "We may not want to give anyone the wrong idea," she said. "Anyone? I doubt your friends are interested in putting your girlfriend on the payroll." She stepped ahead, checking out potential exits should things turn south. "And you said you weren't looking for love yet, remember?" Clive reddened. "Yes, I remember." Gracie smiled and said nothing, despite the urge to scream. The hostess stopped before the entrance to a private dining room. "Your server will be in shortly," she said. "I'd go in myself, but your associates were emphatic that nobody outside the party itself and John should have access. He is our highest-rated server." "No doubt. Thank you." Clive reached into his breast pocket and retrieved a folded bill. "Thank you, Clive. Enjoy your meal." The woman turned to Gracie. "Ma'am." Gracie waited until the hostess was out of earshot. "Thank you so much for this opportunity, Clive. I mean it." Guilt smoked over her, and she couldn't shake it. Maybe the FBI would offer Clive a way out. Maybe the person who initially hired Gracie would shelter Clive from his own foolishness. "I'm sorry if I'm not what you hoped for tonight." "What I hoped for?" He flattened his brows and sought her out with earnest eyes. "You are what I need, Gracie Snow. Sweet, strong, honest, and so incredibly talented." Clive pushed open the door and gasped a sudden suck of air. Gracie gasped too, until her world went sideways. Meanwhile, Jay Sykes tunneled fingers through his gelled hair. He didn't bother glancing in the spotlighted mirror in the foyer, but left his Las Vegas suite. He wanted the night's business over and done. The fish in Virginia awaited, eager for Jay to feed them so many worms and salmon eggs while giving nothing in return. Jay was inclined to give the bluegill, bass, and channel catfish he caught a second or third chance, while he lived off refrigerator food. But semi-retired with special forces in the rearview mirror, he could do as he pleased without judgment. His judgment or anyone else's. The corridor swelled like a cream taxiway toward a lone elevator. Subdued sconces hung on the wall. A cocoon silence surrounded him, and Jay drank it up, prepping for the switch in scenery the evening would bring. His cell phone vibrated. He expected the call, but resented the interruption. The slim ball and chain felt too familiar as he lifted the phone from his pocket. "Sykes!" "Father will be there." Katya Kadarov's voice reeked of boarding school polish. "French to mask her Uzbekistan heritage." "I tried to dissuade him, but you know how he is." "You forget I've never met the man." "Good thing." Jay avoided bad ideas. "I get the type, though. Men who forced women turned his stomach." The added insult of slapping the terms holy or matrimony on said force made no difference. Human trafficking took many forms. "I can't thank you enough," Katya said. "Hold on to that. This isn't over." Katya laughed with obvious nerves. "Come to the win when it's done. Father doesn't know I'm here." "Then how do you know he'll be at the party?" Jay asked. Jay didn't like Katya's secret-keeping, especially when it was his skin on the line, but his old friend had other sources of intelligence that made sense. Katya's decision to stay at one of the Strip's most expensive hotels beggared belief, however. Money was her problem. That and a father who believed bartering his daughter to get some was perfectly reasonable. But Katya had left Jay only minutes ago with a great big hug and the assurance that she had her end of tonight's business well in hand. She'd feigned ignorance of her father's activities and total compliance with her coming marriage. Lying came naturally to her, but that was totally understandable. Father and I spoke by phone, she said. He believes I'm in Paris being fitted for my trousseau, and it doesn't matter, Jay interrupted. I'll update you when there's something to tell. Great. I need to know if this firm he's dealing with is legitimate. If the investments aren't real, you don't want him scammed again. I got it. A swoosh broke the hush. Jay sidestepped the nasty pile of towels being tossed in the hallway by a disinterested middle-aged woman. I'll never get out of this sham marriage if he loses more cash, Katya said. My father can't live in the streets, though, no matter what my feelings. Katya, no. There are worse things than arranged marriages, but whatever you do, don't let my father get a hint of you knowing him or anything about him, Katya said. He'll get suspicious. Have you had him tailed before? I've done what I needed to survive. Steel replaced Katya's nerves. You of all people should understand what it's like for a woman in my position. Yeah, I get it. Though he knew some women, one in particular who handled survival issues differently. That's why I'm here. Strictly speaking, Jay shouldn't be doing this. The fact that he was working for a foreign national shot straight to losing his security clearance. Not that Jay needed it anymore. He rechecked the Glock 9mm secured in his jacket. He'd never go back to that kind of crazy. A dude playing a dude playing a dude had spun his head long enough. Too many sacrifices made Jay a dull boy. Forget having a life, normal or otherwise. But he'd act like a bored billionaire for the night. An afternoon spent in the casino had netted him an invitation to the evening's party. Jay didn't doubt for an instant that Rana Capital, the firm courting Katya's father, was a scam. The level of shade surrounding the business is what Jay questioned. The investment group had rented the Nobu penthouse, and while the Nobu Hotel extension of Caesar's Palace was posh, it wasn't untouchable price-wise. That's typically not the way high-rolling scams went. I'm sorry, Jay. Katya always apologized after the fact. That was harsh. It's understandable. Sit tight and I'll take care of this. Jay hung up, wishing he could take care of the blonde juggernaut haunting him. His best friend Danny Snow's little sister was a constant menace. Gracie lived somewhere in Vegas out there in the dark. The truth that she was bitter and alone was too much. Jay owed the Snow family, Gracie in particular, even though she spat in his face. Jay's friendship with Danny was over, exploded and beyond repair. Gracie had made a point of doing things all by herself, even when they were kids. But overcoming the political blackball that saw Gracie, a newly minted officer, popped back to the United States, with her military career obliterated before it began, was impossible to let go. Jay had tried helping her on the sly. He'd probably try again, as repaying that marker would mean the world. He prayed, what he guessed prayer to be, but knew Gracie Snow would never accept his help. A hush of voices pulled him to the present, long before the tail end of the cleaning cart winked at the end of the hallway. He jogged ahead and fished 2 crisp bills from his wallet by the time he rounded the corner. Pardon me, he said to the pair of women beside the cart. No, pardon us, sir. The shorter of the two was in uniform. She glanced at his shoes. I'm sorry we've disturbed you. Is there something you need? The audacious girl with wide brown eyes and a stark collarbone met his inspection. She wasn't in a uniform. Fresh towels? She didn't strike him as a maid. Maybe later, he said. The room's great. I didn't get the chance to leave a tip. He set the money in her hand, uncertain if this was the woman who'd cleaned up his mess from earlier. She'd likely have to clean the one in the hall behind him. Thank the staff for me, he said. The brown-eyed girl stabbed a finger toward the side of his collar. The laundry could get that lipstick out. Jay didn't bother asking what lipstick. Katya had struck again. Big hugs could equal big trouble, at least in some countries, but this wasn't Uzbekistan. It's not a big deal, he said. The berry stain would likely give him creds considering the company that awaited him. No, it's no trouble, the uniform maid assured him. Whatever you need. Jay smiled. Yes, I know. I can count on you. The short maid blushed. Yes, sir. Excellent. I may call on you. Janet, he said, catching the name on the gold tag. It always paid to be good to the staff, even if he wasn't acting like the high roller. Now, I enjoy tipping. He pulled out another couple of bills, but she raised a pudgy hand. Too much, said Janet. I enjoy my work, sir. Maybe so, he countered. But if you won't take this, maybe your friend will share. Jay gave the tall woman the extra bills, then tucked his chin and waited. The maid accepted the money from her friend, who continued her heavy-lidded assessment. "Thank you, sir," the bold one said. "Sykes, Jay Sykes." Whatever their business, Jay got the distinct impression he'd put a wrench in it. He couldn't wait to get back to Virginia. The sooner the better. And you're welcome. Gracie willed strength into her legs, her knees buckling. Leather chairs, a long buffet table, and unfamiliar faces smeared together. What's going on? She clapped a hand to her neck. Clive's friends had stuck her with a pin or a dart or something. Drugs pushed through her veins. That had to be it. Her cheeks seemed to freeze. Poor Clive slumped against her shoes. His body braced her wobbly ankles while the noxious combo of fresh blood and cologne gagged her. "You wanted to meet the team." A bald head ending in a neat beard lunged toward her. Another voice said, "They're eager to meet you, Agent Snow." "What?" She gasped for air. "No." Blackness pressed all around even before someone slipped a hood over her head. Rough hands shoved and tugged. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "Clive said you could use my services. I'm a detective." "We know exactly who you are." The laughed words swam in her ears. Gracie grimaced, though maybe she didn't. She fought for control of her muscles while images of Danny and Jay seared her soul. Happy times, regrets, kicking and screaming might free her from the vice grip on her elbows right now if she could move, but the same could get her killed. Her muscles weren't following orders anyway, but Gracie hoped her camera was, picking up everything as it had been programmed to do. Although with folds of cloth falling over her neck it wouldn't do much good. But Fitz must hear every word. Backup could come, and there had to be some reason she wasn't lying dead on the floor beside Clive. "So, there's no bug in the ear," the first voice sounded overhead as she was hauled up against hard muscle. "No wires?" "I didn't say that." Her words slurred. Another captor said, "Then shut up and take the meeting." Gracie did not know who had spoken. She was hustled outside. It must be outside, or a freezer. Cool air hit her right along with another blast of men's cologne. Expensive and too much, and not Clive's. Her heart squeezed in sadness before she spoke. "That's what my client wants. To meet," she lied. "That could be the reason some unknown person had paid her to help Clive. I'm sure your boss wants me in one piece. Otherwise, what's the point?" Fitz had to be hearing this. Survival depended on making it from one second to the next, one lie to the next. High heels worked against her. They tripped and wobbled beneath her noodle legs. She shook her head, the slow motion drag filling her mouth with saliva. Her stomach heaved. Nothing came up. Tingles bored into her flesh, her arms flopping as she was dragged. But to where? A meeting? Was the person who initially contracted her to help Clive waiting for her? That would be twisted. Her head pulsed. Laughter gurgled, tears squeezing from her eyes. She'd give anything to hear Fitz lord it over her one more time, or however long Fitz wanted. Distant traffic sounds hit Gracie's muffled ears. Her captor growled, "Who's your client?" I can't say." It was a sad fact, her bleary mind clarified. Foreign flesh pressed against her cheek. "You will say. Trust me." "If I get the okay, sure. I'll tell you whatever you want. No problem," she mumbled with all the sarcasm she dared to get her message across. Trust was earned even among thieves. "Otherwise, I'll be just as dead, and so will you." A name, the same she didn't have, was all that stood between her and a puddle of her own blood.